Exactly 80 years ago, the world was introduced to a small storybook titled The Three Railway Engines. It marks the beginning of the Railway series. Following its success came more titles: Thomas the Tank Engine, James the Red Engine, Tank Engine Thomas again, and many others. Decades after the debut of that first book, the series found new life in a television adaptation, Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, which premiered in 1984. And the rest, as they say, is history. Last year, Thomas and Friends celebrated its 40th anniversary on television, but this year, the Railway series celebrates 80 years since it first captured the hearts of kids. Interestingly, a few days ago, Mattel publicly released the fully restored original Down the Mine pilot episode of Thomas from 1983 to celebrate the anniversary, giving the fans the gift they've been wanting for many years. Thomas has been part of the world for 8 decades, helping raise millions of children across generations. This is my story of how one little blue engine raised me. This this is me. I was born on June 20, 2005, during a time when children's media was starting to evolve. Animation was shifting from hand-drawn 2D to computer-generated 3D, and soon CGI became the norm. It was an interesting era to grow up in. I was young, growing up in a new millennium, watching the world unfold right before my eyes. But for some reason, I connected most with something different. My mom told me this story a few years ago. I was about 2 years old, and I was sick. My mom doesn't exactly remember what illness I had, but it was serious enough to take me to the doctor. That doctor was a lovely person. Wanting to cheer me up, she gave me something that would go on to alter my entire childhood. It was a box that had once belonged to her son, who had outgrown it and no longer wanted it. Inside were toy trains and a handful of old DVDs. The label on them read, Thomas and Friends. Those 3 words were simple, but powerful enough to change my childhood. Moving forward, it was the only thing I could think about. Nothing but Thomas. I remember having favorite episodes that I kept rewatching as a child. Thomas Terrence and the Snow, The Flying Kipper, Old Iron, Percy and Harold, Thomas Comes to Breakfast, A Close Shave, Percy's Promise, Grandpuff, Train Stops Play, Paint Pots and Queens, and many, many more. Even as I got older and started grade school, I started having new interests. Thomas was still very much on top. Other kids were into Five Nights at Freddy's, Marvel movies, Legos, but I was still watching Thomas and Friends. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love all the things I've mentioned, but nothing really came close. Thomas the Tank Engine was the number one thing on my mind. I wasn't the only one that changed either. Thomas had progressed too. The charming model engines transitioned to CGI, and as a kid I thought it looked incredible. The world of Sodor felt even bigger. But even with all the changes, it still felt like Thomas to me. He was still the same little blue engine that had caught my heart years ago, and that made it feel like the show was growing with me. High school came, and I slowly turned. My love for Thomas began to fade. I grew older, learned new things from life, until life itself started taking things away. I gave away my toys, and with them, everything that reminded me of a time when Thomas was all I cared about. I could even say I forgot I was ever a fan. It wasn't that I hated Thomas or anything, but it's just that life was moving faster than I was ready for. I focused so much on school, new friendships, the pressure to fit in, and as I tried to grow up, those things seemed more important than the simple joy I found in Thomas. Without me even realizing it, Thomas was gone. It felt like I was putting away a piece of myself I didn't know how to hold on to anymore. Thomas wasn't in my mind anymore, and it felt like a part of my childhood seemed to vanish forever. And then 2020 came. The world shut down. Everyone was in quarantine. At first, it felt kinda nice. No pressure, no responsibilities, just me in my room with more free time than I'd ever had. But after a while, the isolation started to feel heavy. I was bored, restless, and I honestly felt a little lost. I tried reading books, binging Netflix, even stress eating just to pass the time, but nothing really helped. It felt as if I paused my life because I didn't know what direction I wanted to go, and my mental health was starting to decline. And then, out of nowhere, I started rewatching Thomas. I had no reason. Nothing really provoked me from doing so. It just felt like something I had to do. I watched an old episode, then another, and suddenly, I couldn't stop. All the joy Thomas gave me as a kid came rushing back. I was hooked again, completely, and before I knew it, I started collecting again. The toys I used to own, the ones I never had. My room was starting to look like an empire. I even fell down the rabbit hole of Thomas lore, watching YouTube videos about lost media, behind the scenes stories, and facts I never knew growing up. It was like discovering a whole new side of something I thought I already knew. Hell, I made a Gauge 1 Thomas, cause why not? Funny how all of this started on a simple quarantine day. Looking back to everything that has happened so far in my life, I really don't know what it would look like if Thomas wasn't in the picture. Because of Thomas, I found friends. Because of Thomas, I learned to be passionate about the things I love. Because of Thomas, I'm happy. It's not nostalgia that brought me here. It's about the belief in something that made me who I am. Thomas reminded me of who I was. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that growing up doesn't mean letting go of everything that made you happy. Sometimes the things we leave behind are the things that remind us of who we are. And for me, that thing was a little blue engine with a number 1 on his side. And honestly, I think he'll always be a part of who I am. Because at some point, I may have left Thomas, but Thomas never left me. Happy 80th birthday, Thomas the Tank Engine.